The smell hit Jasmine first. Not the usual hospital scent of bleach and medicine, but something else, something wrong. She stood outside room 412, holding her clipboard with shaking hands, reading the patient file for the third time. Alexander Sterling, age 32, comatose for 2 years after a mysterious accident. The notes were thin, too thin for someone who had been here so long. "He's all yours now," said Nancy, the head nurse, placing a heavy hand on Jasmine's shoulder. His previous nurse requested a transfer, said she couldn't handle it anymore. Jasmine looked through the small window into the dimly lit room. A man lay motionless on the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed. Even from here she could see he was handsome, with dark hair and strong features. But there was something about the way he lay there, too still, too perfect, that made her stomach turn. "What happened to him?" Jasmine asked, but Nancy was already walking away. "Read the file," Nancy called over her shoulder, "and good luck." Jasmine pushed open the door and stepped into the room. The first thing she noticed were the flowers. Dead flowers, dozens of them, wilted and brown, sitting in expensive vases around the room. No one had changed them in weeks, maybe months. The second thing she noticed were the scars. Alexander Sterling's body was covered in strange marks. Not surgical scars from the accident, but thin lines that looked almost like writing. She moved closer, her heart pounding. The marks were faded like old tattoos, but they formed patterns she couldn't understand. "Hello, Mr. Sterling," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Jasmine. I'll be taking care of you from now on." His face was peaceful, almost too peaceful. His skin was pale but not sickly. His breathing was even and deep. Everything about him screamed that he should wake up, but he didn't. He never did. Jasmine began her routine, checking his vital signs and preparing for his daily bath. As she filled the basin with warm water, she noticed something else strange. The medical chart showed he should have muscle weakness from being bedridden for 2 years, but his body looked strong, almost like he was just sleeping. She started with his arms, gently washing each finger, each inch of skin. The scars were more visible up close and her breath caught in her throat. They weren't random marks. They looked like symbols, like someone had deliberately carved them into his skin. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, tracing one of the marks with her finger. That's when it happened. For just a moment, just a split second, she felt his muscle tighten under her touch. She froze, staring at his face, waiting for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. His eyes remained closed, his breathing unchanged. Jasmine shook her head. She was imagining things. 2 years of being unconscious, the file said. People didn't just wake up after 2 years, especially not from whatever had happened to Alexander Sterling. She continued washing him, trying to ignore the way her heart raced every time she touched one of those strange scars. The marks covered his chest, his back, even his legs. Someone had spent a long time making them. Someone had hurt him badly, and she was starting to suspect his accident wasn't really an accident at all. As she worked, she found herself talking to him. It wasn't unusual for nurses to talk to coma patients, but something about Alexander made her want to tell him things she'd never told anyone. "I became a nurse because I wanted to help people," she said softly, washing his shoulders. "But sometimes I wonder if I'm really making a difference. Most patients get better and leave. Others," she looked at his peaceful face. "Others stay, and we just keep them comfortable until—" She couldn't finish the sentence. There was something about Alexander that made her believe he wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. The strangest part was how clean he always was. According to the notes, he should need constant care to prevent infections and sores, but his skin was perfect. Too perfect. Like someone else had been taking extra special care of him, but there was no record of it in his file. Jasmine finished the bath and helped him into fresh clothes. As she tucked the blanket around him, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. There were fresh marks on his wrists, not scars like the others, but new ones. "Recent ones. Someone's been here," she whispered, looking around the empty room. "Someone's been hurting you." She checked the visitor log, but it was blank. According to the records, no one had visited Alexander Sterling in over 6 months. His family lived across the country and rarely called. His business associates had forgotten about him. He was completely alone, which made the fresh marks even more terrifying. Jasmine sat down in the chair beside his bed, studying his face. He was beautiful, there was no denying that. High cheekbones, full lips, thick eyelashes that any woman would envy. But beauty couldn't explain the fear she felt whenever she looked at him. "What happened to you, Alexander?" she asked. "And why do I feel like it's still happening?" As if in response to her question, the machines around his bed began to beat faster. His heart rate was increasing, but his face remained calm. Jasmine jumped up, checking the monitors, but everything looked normal. His vitals were actually better than they'd been in months. She was about to call for a doctor when the beeping stopped. Everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. But Jasmine knew something had changed. She could feel it in the air, like electricity before a storm. She spent the rest of her shift watching him, taking notes on every little detail. The way his fingers curved slightly, as if he was dreaming of holding something. The way his lips sometimes moved, like he was trying to speak. The way his eyes moved beneath his closed lids, like he was watching something she couldn't see. By the time her shift ended, Jasmine was exhausted but couldn't shake the feeling that Alexander Sterling was more aware than anyone realized. As she gathered her things to leave, she made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going to find out what really happened to you," she promised him, "and I'm going to make sure no one hurts you again." She turned off the lights and headed for the door, but stopped when she heard something that made her heart stop. A whisper so soft she almost missed it, "Thank you." Jasmine spun around, staring at Alexander's still form in the darkness. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful, his breathing even. But she knew what she'd heard. She knew he had spoken. She stood there for a long moment, waiting for it to happen again, but the room remained silent. Finally, she stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her, her mind racing with possibilities. Alexander Sterling was not in a coma. He was trapped, and she was the only one who knew. Jasmine couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alexander's face and heard that whispered thank you. She'd been a nurse for 5 years, had cared for dozens of coma patients, and she'd never experienced anything like this. The next morning, she arrived at work early and went straight to the hospital's records department. If Alexander Sterling wasn't really in a coma, she needed to understand what was keeping him unconscious. "Can I help you?" asked Mrs. Chen, the records keeper. "I need to see everything you have on Alexander Sterling in room 412, Jasmine said, trying to sound casual. Mrs. Chen's expression changed immediately. "That file is restricted." "Doctor's orders." "Restricted, but I'm his nurse. I need to know his medical history to care for him properly." "I'm sorry, dear. I can only give you the basic care instructions. Anything else needs approval from Dr. Harrison." Jasmine thanked her and walked away, but her suspicions were growing stronger. Why would a coma patient's file be restricted? What were they hiding? She decided to do some research on her own. During her lunch break, she used the hospital's computer to search for information about Alexander Sterling. What she found made her even more confused. According to news articles from 2 years ago, Alexander Sterling was a successful businessman who had built his fortune in technology. But unlike most billionaires, he was known for his charity work. He had donated millions to hospitals, schools, and programs for underprivileged children. People called him a saint, a man who truly cared about making the world better. So why was he here, alone and forgotten, with mysterious scars covering his body? The accident report was brief and vague. Alexander had been found unconscious in his home office, apparently having fallen and hit his head. But Jasmine had seen enough head trauma patients to know that his injuries didn't match that story. The scars on his body were too precise, too deliberate. When she returned to his room, she found something that made her heart race. There was a new vase of fresh flowers on his bedside table, beautiful white roses that definitely hadn't been there that morning. "Excuse me," she called to another nurse passing by. "Did someone visit Mr. Sterling today?" "Not that I know of. Why?" Jasmine pointed to the flowers. "These weren't here this morning." The other nurse shrugged. "Maybe housekeeping brought them. You know how they like to brighten up the long-term rooms." But Jasmine knew housekeeping didn't bring expensive roses. Someone had been in Alexander's room, someone who wasn't signing the visitor log. She approached his bed cautiously, studying his face for any sign of change. He looked the same as always, peaceful and still, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was listening to every word she said. "Someone brought you flowers," she said softly, beginning her routine care. "Do you know who it was?" As she started his bath, she examined the scars on his body more carefully. In daylight, they were even more disturbing. The marks weren't random cuts or burns. They formed intricate patterns like a code or language she couldn't read. "These aren't from an accident," she whispered, tracing one of the symbols with her finger. "Someone did this to you on purpose." This time she was sure she felt him respond. His muscle tensed under her touch and his breathing changed slightly. She looked at his face, but his eyes remained closed. "I know you can hear me," she said, her voice stronger now. "I don't know why you can't wake up, but I know you're in there." She continued washing him, talking to him about her day, her life, anything that came to mind. As she worked, she noticed other strange things. His skin was too warm, too healthy for someone who had been bedridden for 2 years. His hair was growing faster than it should. Even his fingernails were perfectly manicured, as if someone was caring for him beyond what the hospital provided. "Someone's been taking care of you," she said, "but they're keeping it secret." "Why?" After finishing his bath, Jasmine sat down with his file, reading every page carefully. The medical notes were strange, too. Different doctors had examined him over the past 2 years, but their findings were inconsistent. Some noted unusual brain activity, others found nothing abnormal. Some mentioned the scars, others ignored them completely. It was like someone was editing his file, removing important information or adding false details. "What did you discover that someone wanted to keep quiet?" she asked him. "What were you working on before your accident?" That evening, Jasmine decided to stay late. She told her supervisor she wanted to monitor Alexander's condition more closely, but really, she wanted to see if anyone would visit him after hours. She dimmed the lights and sat in the corner of the room, pretending to read while keeping watch. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, careful footsteps that stopped outside Alexander's door. Jasmine held her breath as the door opened quietly. A figure in a dark coat entered the room, moving silently toward Alexander's bed. In the dim light, she couldn't see the person's face, but she could tell they were carrying something. The figure bent over Alexander and whispered something too quiet for Jasmine to hear. Then they pulled out a small vial and a syringe. Jasmine's heart pounded as she realized what she was witnessing. Someone was injecting Alexander with something, and it wasn't part of his medical treatment. She waited until the figure left, then rushed to Alexander's bedside. His breathing was deeper now, more labored. Whatever they had given him was designed to keep him unconscious. "They're drugging you," she whispered. "Someone wants to keep you asleep." She checked his IV line and found a small injection port that wasn't in his medical records. Someone had been giving him regular doses of something to maintain his unconscious state. Jasmine made a decision that she knew could cost her job. She disconnected the unauthorized IV line and disposed of it. If someone was keeping Alexander unconscious against his will, she wasn't going to be part of it. "I'm going to help you," she promised him, "whatever it takes." For the rest of the night, she stayed by his side, watching for any changes. Around dawn, she noticed something that made her heart leap. Alexander's eyelids were fluttering like he was trying to open them. "That's it," she encouraged him. "Fight it. Wake up." His fingers began to move slightly and his breathing became more natural. The drugs were wearing off and his body was trying to wake up. But just as the sun rose, Jasmine heard footsteps in the hallway again. Dr. Harrison was making his morning rounds, and she knew he would notice the missing IV line. She quickly reconnected Alexander's legitimate medical equipment and tried to look busy when the doctor entered. "How's our patient this morning?" Dr. Harrison asked, but something in his tone made Jasmine nervous. "The same as always," she lied, hoping he wouldn't notice the changes she'd observed. Dr. Harrison examined Alexander briefly, then made some notes in his file. "I want to increase his medication," he said. "He seems to be showing signs of agitation." "Agitation? He's been completely still." "Trust me, nurse. I know what's best for my patient." After Dr. Harrison left, Jasmine realized the horrible truth. The doctor was part of whatever was happening to Alexander. The medical staff, the restricted files, the mysterious visitors, it was all connected. Alexander Sterling wasn't just a coma patient. He was a prisoner, trapped in his own body by people who wanted to keep him silent. And now that she knew the truth, she was in danger too. But as she looked at his peaceful face, she made a promise that would change both their lives forever. "I'm going to save you," she whispered, "no matter what it takes." 3 days had passed since Jasmine disconnected the unauthorized IV, and she was starting to see real changes in Alexander. His color was better, his breathing was stronger, and sometimes she caught his eyes moving beneath his closed lids like he was dreaming. She had become an expert at hiding these improvements from the medical staff. When Dr. Harrison made his rounds, she made sure Alexander appeared completely unconscious. But during her private moments with him, she encouraged him to fight against whatever was keeping him trapped. "I know this is scary," she said while giving him his morning bath. "You've been asleep for 2 years, but I'm here and I'm going to help you through this." As she washed his arms, she noticed his muscles were responding more to her touch. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but she could feel the subtle changes. His body was waking up, even if his mind was still struggling to break free. "Can you hear me, Alexander?" she asked softly. "If you can, try to move your fingers." She placed her hand over his, waiting and watching. For a moment nothing happened. Then so slowly she almost missed it, his pinky finger moved against her palm. Jasmine gasped, her heart racing with excitement. "You did it, you moved." She looked at his face, hoping to see his eyes open, but they remained closed. Still, this was progress, real, undeniable progress. "Let's try again," she said. "Move your finger if you can understand me." This time the movement was clearer, more deliberate. Alexander was definitely responding to her voice. Jasmine spent the rest of her shift talking to him about everything and nothing, asking him simple questions that he could answer with finger movements. Slowly they developed a basic communication system. 1 movement for yes, 2 for no. "Are you in pain?" she asked. 1 movement, yes. "Are you scared?" 2 movements, no. "Do you trust me?" A pause, then 1 strong movement. Yes, Jasmine felt tears in her eyes. After 2 years of silence, Alexander was finally communicating with someone. But she knew she had to be careful. If Dr. Harrison or the mysterious visitors discovered that Alexander was waking up, they might do something desperate to keep him quiet. That afternoon, while Alexander rested, Jasmine did more research. She searched for information about drugs that could keep someone unconscious for extended periods. What she found was terrifying. There were several experimental drugs that could maintain a coma-like state while keeping the patient physically healthy. These drugs were sometimes used in witness protection programs or by governments to keep dangerous prisoners quiet. But they were illegal for civilian use and could cause permanent brain damage if used for too long. Someone had been using Alexander as a test subject, keeping him unconscious while maintaining his physical health. But why? What did he know that was worth 2 years of his life? When she returned to his room, she found him more responsive than ever. His breathing was almost normal, and she could see his eyes moving more frequently beneath his closed lids. "Alexander," she said, taking his hand, "I need to ask you something important. Before your accident, were you investigating something dangerous?" 1 movement, yes. "Did someone try to stop you?" 1 movement, yes. "Are they still trying to keep you quiet?" 1 movement, more urgent this time. "Yes." Jasmine felt a chill run down her spine. Alexander wasn't just a victim of some random attack. He had discovered something that powerful people wanted to keep secret, and they were willing to steal years of his life to protect that secret. "I'm going to help you," she promised. "But we have to be smart about this. If they know you're waking up." Alexander's finger moved twice. No, he understood the danger they were both in. That evening, Jasmine made a decision that terrified her. She stayed after her shift ended, hiding in the supply closet across from Alexander's room. She needed to see who was visiting him and what they were doing. Around 11 p.m., the mysterious figure returned. This time, Jasmine was ready. She used her phone to take pictures as the person entered Alexander's room. In the dim light, she could see it was a woman in expensive clothes, not a doctor or nurse. The woman spent about 10 minutes with Alexander, whispering things Jasmine couldn't hear. Then she prepared another injection, the same type Jasmine had seen before. But this time, something went wrong. As the woman tried to inject the drug into Alexander's IV, his arm moved. Not much, just a slight twitch, but enough to make the woman drop the syringe. Jasmine watched in horror as the woman grabbed Alexander's shoulders and shook him, hissing words that sounded like threats. When Alexander didn't respond further, the woman picked up the syringe and tried again. This time, Alexander's entire body tensed. His back arched slightly off the bed, and a low moan escaped his lips. The woman stepped back in shock, staring at him with fear in her eyes. Jasmine knew she had to act. If this woman realized Alexander was waking up, she might do something even worse to keep him quiet. Without thinking, Jasmine burst out of the supply closet and into the room. "Stop!" she shouted. "Get away from him." The woman spun around, her face twisted with anger and surprise. She was older than Jasmine had expected, maybe 50, with perfectly styled gray hair and cold blue eyes. "Who are you?" the woman demanded. "I'm his nurse. You're not supposed to be here." "I'm family," the woman lied smoothly. "I have every right to visit." "Then why aren't you in the visitor log, and what's in that syringe?" The woman's expression hardened. "You don't know what you're dealing with, girl. Walk away now and you won't get hurt." But Jasmine stood her ground, moving to stand between the woman and Alexander's bed. "I'm not going anywhere. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling security." The woman studied Jasmine for a long moment, then smiled coldly. "You think you're protecting him. You have no idea what he's done, what he's capable of. Some people are better off sleeping." "He's not sleeping, you're drugging him." "Prove it," the woman said, dropping the syringe into her purse. "Prove that I was ever here." With that, she walked calmly out of the room, leaving Jasmine shaking with adrenaline and fear. Jasmine rushed to Alexander's bedside, checking his vital signs. His heart rate was elevated, and she could see his eyes moving rapidly beneath his closed lids. "It's okay," she whispered, taking his hand. "She's gone. You're safe." His finger moved against her palm, a weak but clear signal that he had heard everything. "We need to get you out of here," Jasmine said. "But first, you need to be strong enough to help me. Can you try to open your eyes?" She watched his face carefully, looking for any sign of movement. Slowly, so slowly she almost missed it, his eyelids began to flutter. "That's it," she encouraged. "You can do this. Open your eyes, Alexander." For just a moment, just a split second, his eyes opened. They were beautiful, deep brown, and full of intelligence and pain. He looked directly at her, and in that instant, Jasmine felt a connection that took her breath away. Then his eyes closed again and he was still. But it was enough. Alexander Sterling was fighting his way back to consciousness, and Jasmine was going to make sure he made it all the way. The war for his freedom had begun. Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about the moment when Alexander had opened his eyes. The memory played in her mind over and over as she went through her daily routine, bathing him, checking his vitals, talking to him about everything and nothing. "I saw you," she whispered as she gently washed his face. "I saw you looking at me. You're still in there fighting to come back." His response was subtle but unmistakable. A slight squeeze of her hand, a change in his breathing pattern when she spoke. Each day he was getting stronger, more aware. But Jasmine was also getting more attached to him, and that scared her. She had always been professional with her patients, caring but distant. With Alexander, those boundaries were disappearing. "This is crazy," she told him one afternoon as she brushed his dark hair. "I'm talking to a man who can't talk back, and somehow I feel closer to you than I've felt to anyone in years." She told him about her childhood, growing up in a small town with dreams of becoming a doctor. How she had to settle for nursing school because her family couldn't afford medical school. How she had never found someone who understood her desire to help people. "You spend your fortune helping others," she said, adjusting his blanket. "Most rich people just buy expensive cars and houses. But you built hospitals and schools. You actually care about making the world better." Alexander's finger moved against her palm. One squeeze, yes. "Is that why someone wants to keep you quiet? Because you were helping people they wanted to hurt?" One squeeze, yes. Jasmine felt anger rising in her chest. Alexander was a good man, someone who used his wealth and power to help others. And someone was stealing his life because of it. Well, they're not going to win, she said firmly. I won't let them. As the days passed, Jasmine found herself staying longer at work, spending extra time with Alexander. She brought him flowers from the hospital garden, played music she thought he might like, and even brought books to read to him. I hope you don't mind romance novels, she said with a laugh, opening a paperback book. They're my guilty pleasure. As she read, she noticed Alexander's breathing change. His heart rate increased slightly, and she could see his eyes moving beneath his closed lids. Are you listening to the story? She asked. One squeeze. Yes. Do you like it? A pause, then one squeeze. Yes. Jasmine blushed, realizing she was reading a particularly romantic scene. Here she was, a professional nurse, reading love stories to her unconscious patient and enjoying his reaction. This is so inappropriate, she muttered, but she didn't stop reading. Over the next week, their communication system became more sophisticated. Alexander learned to squeeze once for yes, twice for no, and 3 times when he wanted her to stop or change what she was doing. He could also tap his finger to spell out letters, though it was slow and exhausting for him. One evening, as Jasmine was preparing to leave, Alexander began tapping frantically. She grabbed a piece of paper and started writing down the letters. DANGER. Jasmine's blood ran cold. What kind of danger? THEYKNOW. They know what? That you're waking up. YOU. They know about me. Jasmine looked around the room nervously. How do they know? CAMERAS. Jasmine felt sick. Of course there were cameras. She had been so focused on helping Alexander that she hadn't thought about surveillance. Someone had been watching them, seeing their communication, witnessing her growing attachment to him. We have to be more careful, she whispered. Can you pretend to be unconscious when others are around? One squeeze, yes, good, and I'll be more professional during the day, but Alexander, she took his hand. I need you to know something. What I feel for you, it's not just nurse and patient anymore. His finger moved against her palm, a gentle caress that made her heart race. I know it's crazy, I know we barely know each other. But spending these weeks caring for you, talking to you, watching you fight to come back, I think I'm falling in love with you. Alexander's response was immediate and strong. He squeezed her hand 3 times, then began tapping letters. MATO. Jasmine felt tears in her eyes. Really? YOURSAVINGME. We're saving each other, she whispered. From that night on, everything changed between them. During the day, when doctors and other staff were around, Jasmine was perfectly professional. She called him Mr. Sterling, spoke in clinical terms, and showed no sign of their connection. But in the evenings, when they were alone, she became just Jasmine. She would hold his hand, stroke his hair, and tell him about her feelings. I used to think love at first sight was just in movies, she said one night. But the moment I saw your eyes open, the moment you looked at me, I knew. Alexander's responses were becoming stronger and more frequent. He could move his fingers more easily, and sometimes she caught him trying to move his lips, like he was attempting to speak. Don't push too hard, she warned him. We need to be patient. If you wake up too quickly, they'll know something is wrong. But Alexander was eager to communicate more. One evening, he managed to move his hand enough to touch her face. It was weak and shaky, but the gesture was so tender that Jasmine started crying. I wish I could hear your voice, she whispered. I wish I could see your smile. WILL, he tapped. SON, promise me something, Jasmine said. When you wake up, really wake up, promise me that what we have is real. Promise me this isn't just because I'm the only person who's been kind to you. Alexander's response was so forceful it surprised her. He squeezed her hand repeatedly, then tapped out a long message. LOVEYOUNOTGRATITUDREAL. Jasmine leaned down and gently kissed his forehead. I love you too, Alexander. And I'm going to make sure you get your life back. But even as she made that promise, she knew their situation was becoming more dangerous. The mysterious woman hadn't returned, but Jasmine sensed they were being watched more closely. Dr. Harrison asked more questions about Alexander's condition, and she noticed security guards walking by his room more frequently. They're planning something, she told Alexander one night. I can feel it. Alexander's response chilled her to the bone. Are you? And he tapped frantically. Leave me, never, Jasmine said firmly. I'm not leaving you, we're in this together now. But as she looked at his peaceful face, she wondered if her love for him was putting them both in even greater danger. And she began to realize that saving Alexander might cost her everything she had worked for. The question was love worth that risk? Jasmine knew she needed help, but she didn't know who to trust. The hospital administration seemed to be involved in whatever was happening to Alexander, and she couldn't risk exposing him to more danger. She decided to investigate on her own, using her days off to research Alexander's life before his accident. What she discovered made her more determined than ever to save him. Alexander Sterling hadn't just been a successful businessman. He had been on the verge of exposing a massive corruption scandal involving several powerful politicians and business leaders. According to news articles from 2 years ago, he had been preparing to testify before a congressional committee about illegal activities in government contracts. Then, suddenly, he had his accident, and all talk of the testimony disappeared. You were going to blow the whistle, Jasmine said to him that evening. That's why they did this to you. Alexander's response was immediate, one strong squeeze. Yes, do you still have evidence? Something they're afraid you'll reveal if you wake up. Another squeeze. Yes, where is it? Alexander began the slow process of tapping out letters. HOMESAFE. It's in a safe at your home. Yes, Jasmine made a decision that terrified her. I'm going to your house. I'm going to find that evidence. Alexander's response was panicked. He squeezed her hand 3 times, the signal to stop. I have to, she insisted. It's the only way to protect you. If I can find the evidence and get it to the right people, they won't have any reason to keep you unconscious. NODANGROUS. Everything about this is dangerous, Jasmine replied, but doing nothing is more dangerous. They're getting suspicious about me. I think they know you're improving. She was right to be worried. That afternoon, Dr. Harrison had pulled her aside for a private conversation. Nurse Williams, he had said, his tone cold and professional. I've noticed you've been spending excessive time with Mr. Sterling. I'm just being thorough with his care, Jasmine had replied, trying to keep her voice steady. His condition hasn't changed in 2 years. There's no need for extra attention. I think it would be best if you were reassigned to other patients. Jasmine's heart had dropped. If they moved her away from Alexander, he would be completely defenseless. Doctor Harrison, I've developed a good routine with him. His care has been excellent under my supervision. That's final, Nurse Williams. You'll be transferred to the cardiac unit next week. Now, sitting beside Alexander's bed, Jasmine knew they were running out of time. She had to act quickly. I'm going to your house tomorrow, she told him. It's Saturday, so I'll have the whole day. Can you tell me where the safe is? Alexander seemed to struggle with the decision, but finally began tapping. BASMENT-OFFICBEHINDPANTING. Behind a painting in your basement office, what's the combination? MYBIRTHDAY. Jasmine realized she didn't know when Alexander's birthday was. It wasn't in his basic medical file. When is your birthday? 031588. March 15, 1988, she repeated. Got it. She spent the rest of the evening researching Alexander's home address and planning her break-in. According to public records, his mansion had been empty since his accident, with only a caretaker service checking on it monthly. The next morning, Jasmine drove to the wealthy neighborhood where Alexander lived. His house was enormous, a modern mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows and perfectly manicured grounds. But it looked abandoned, with newspapers piled on the front steps and overgrown flower beds. Jasmine walked around the property looking for a way in. She found an unlocked basement window and squeezed through, dropping into what appeared to be a laundry room. The house was eerily quiet and covered in dust. It was clear no one had lived here for years. Jasmine made her way through the basement, looking for Alexander's office. She found it behind a heavy wooden door. The office was impressive, with built-in bookshelves, a massive desk, and expensive artwork on the walls. but everything was covered in dust sheets, like someone had prepared the house for a long absence. Jasmine searched the walls for paintings, finally finding a large abstract piece behind the desk. She carefully lifted it down and found the safe Alexander had described. Her hands shook as she entered the combination. 31588. The safe clicked open. Inside, she found stacks of documents, photographs, and USB drives. Even at first glance, she could see these were explosive materials. Financial records showing illegal payments, photographs of meetings between politicians and criminals, audio recordings labeled with dates and names. Alexander hadn't just been planning to expose corruption. He had enough evidence to bring down dozens of powerful people. Jasmine grabbed everything from the safe and stuffed it into a large bag she had brought. As she prepared to leave, she heard something that made her blood run cold. Footsteps upstairs. Someone was in the house. Jasmine quickly closed the safe and rehung the painting. She could hear voices now, at least 2 people moving through the house above her. "Check every room," a man's voice said. "Someone's been here recently." Jasmine realized they were looking for the same evidence she had just found. If they caught her with Alexander's documents, they would kill her without hesitation. She quietly made her way back to the laundry room, but the basement window was too high for her to reach from inside. She was trapped. The footsteps were getting closer. She could hear them on the basement stairs now. Jasmine hid behind the water heater, clutching the bag of evidence. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure they would hear it. "The office looks undisturbed," one voice said. "Check the safe anyway," replied another. This voice was familiar. It was the woman who had been visiting Alexander at the hospital. Jasmine heard them enter Alexander's office. A few minutes later, there was cursing and angry conversation. "It's empty," the woman said. "Someone got here first." "The nurse," the man replied. "It has to be her. She's been getting too close to Sterling." "Then we need to take care of both problems, tonight." Jasmine's blood turned to ice. They were planning to kill Alexander and her. She waited until the voices moved back upstairs, then carefully climbed onto a box to reach the basement window. She squeezed through and ran to her car, the bag of evidence clutched tightly in her arms. As she drove away, she saw a black sedan parked down the street. She was being followed. Jasmine drove carefully, trying not to let on that she knew about the tale. She went to a coffee shop, then a grocery store, acting like she was running normal errands. Finally, she lost them in traffic and headed back to the hospital. She had the evidence that could free Alexander, but now their enemies knew she had it. The final confrontation was coming, and she needed Alexander to be ready. That evening, she sat beside his bed, the bag of evidence hidden in the supply closet. "I got it," she whispered. "I have everything from your safe." Alexander's response was stronger than she had ever felt. He squeezed her hand so hard it almost hurt. "But they know, they're coming for us tonight." Fear flickered across Alexander's face, even with his eyes closed. "I need you to wake up," Jasmine said urgently. "Really wake up. I can't protect us both if you can't help me." Alexander's breathing changed, becoming deeper and more purposeful. She could see him fighting against whatever drugs were still in his system. "Come on," she encouraged. "You've been fighting for 2 years, don't give up now." Slowly, almost impossibly, Alexander's eyes began to open. Not just the brief flutter she had seen before, but a real awakening. His brown eyes focused on her face, full of awareness and determination. "Jasmine," he whispered, his voice rough from years of silence. She felt tears streaming down her face. "You're awake, you're really awake." "I love you," he said, his hand moving to touch her cheek. "Thank you for saving me." "We're not safe yet," she warned him. "They're coming." Alexander struggled to sit up, his body weak from years of forced inactivity. "The evidence." "I have it, everything from your safe." "Good girl," he said with a weak smile. "Now we need to get out of here." But as he spoke, the lights in the hallway flickered off. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "They're here," Alexander said grimly. Jasmine helped him to his feet, supporting his weight as his legs trembled. After 2 years of being bedridden, he could barely stand. "There's a service elevator at the end of the hall," she whispered. "If we can make it there." The sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor, multiple people moving purposefully toward Alexander's room. "Too late," Alexander said. "We have to hide." Jasmine looked around the room desperately. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to run. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Alexander squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "I want you to know that meeting you, falling in love with you, it made these 2 years worth surviving." The door handle began to turn. The door opened slowly and Jasmine held her breath. But instead of the dangerous people she expected, a young security guard peered into the room. "Power outage in this wing," he said casually. "Just checking to make sure all the patients are okay." Jasmine quickly helped Alexander lie back down and pretend to be unconscious. "Everything's fine here," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The guard nodded and moved on, but Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. The real threat was still coming. Over the next hour, several more visitors came to Alexander's room. A maintenance worker who spent too much time looking at Alexander's monitors. A cleaning lady who seemed more interested in the medical equipment than actually cleaning. A doctor Jasmine had never seen before who claimed to be consulting on Alexander's case. Each time, Alexander played his part perfectly, remaining completely still while Jasmine acted professionally. But she could see the strain it was putting on him. He was weak from his awakening, and pretending to be unconscious was exhausting. "We need to get you out of here," she whispered during a quiet moment. "Can you walk?" "I'm trying," he replied softly, "but my legs, it's like they've forgotten how." Jasmine helped him practice moving his limbs, disguising it as routine physical therapy in case anyone was watching. Slowly, Alexander began to regain some control over his body. "Tell me about the evidence," he said as she helped him flex his arms. "What did you find?" "Financial records, photos, audio recordings. Enough to put a lot of powerful people in prison." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Senator Morrison, Judge Williams, Police Chief Martinez, they're all involved. That's why they couldn't let me testify." "Who's the woman who's been visiting you?" "The one with gray hair." "Victoria Cross. She works for Morrison, handles his dirty business. She's the one who arranged my poisoning." Jasmine felt sick. "Poisoning?" "At a charity dinner 2 years ago. I started feeling dizzy during my speech, then everything went black. When I woke up here, I couldn't move or speak, but I could hear everything. They told everyone I had fallen and hit my head, but I knew what had really happened." "My God, Alexander. You've been aware this whole time." "Not completely. The drugs they gave me came in waves. Sometimes I was more conscious, sometimes less. But I always knew you were there, taking care of me." Jasmine squeezed his hand. "We're going to make them pay for what they did to you." "First we need to survive the night," Alexander said grimly. Around midnight the real visitors arrived. Jasmine heard them in the hallway, speaking in low, urgent voices. She recognized Victoria Cross's voice immediately. "The nurse has the evidence," Victoria was saying. "We need to eliminate both problems tonight." "What about the hospital staff?" another voice asked. "We have people inside." "No one will ask questions." Jasmine's heart raced. They were planning to kill Alexander and make it look like a medical emergency. And they would probably kill her too, making it seem like she had a breakdown over losing a patient. She quickly helped Alexander out of bed. He was stronger now, able to stand with support but still unsteady on his feet. "Service elevator," she whispered, supporting his weight as they moved toward the door. But as they reached the hallway, they saw figures at both ends of the corridor. They were trapped. Jasmine pulled Alexander into the supply closet where she had hidden the evidence. It was cramped and dark, but it was their only option. Through the thin door, they heard footsteps entering Alexander's room, angry voices when they discovered the empty bed. "Find them," Victoria ordered. "They can't have gone far. He's been unconscious for 2 years, he can barely walk." Jasmine and Alexander pressed themselves against the back wall of the closet, hardly daring to breathe. Alexander's arm was around her, and she could feel him trembling with effort and exhaustion. "I'm sorry," he whispered so quietly she could barely hear him. "I'm sorry I got you involved in this." "I chose to get involved," she whispered back. "I chose to save you." They heard the searchers moving systematically through the rooms, getting closer to their hiding place. Jasmine grabbed the bag of evidence, ready to run if they were discovered. "If something happens to me," Alexander said, "promise me you'll get that evidence to the FBI. Agent Sarah Chen, she was investigating the corruption before I was poisoned. She'll know what to do with it." "Nothing's going to happen to you," Jasmine insisted. "We're getting out of this together." The footsteps stopped right outside the supply closet. Jasmine held her breath as the door handle turned. But just then, alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. Fire alarms, medical emergency alarms, security alarms. Chaos erupted in the corridors. "What the hell?" Victoria's voice shouted over the noise. "Someone pulled the emergency alerts," another voice replied. "Security is responding to multiple floors." In the confusion, Jasmine heard the searchers move away from their hiding spot. Someone had created a distraction, but who? "Now," Alexander whispered, "while they're distracted." Jasmine helped him out of the closet and toward the service elevator. Alexander's legs were getting stronger with each step, muscle memory returning after 2 years of forced inactivity. They made it to the elevator and started descending to the parking garage. But as the doors opened, they found Victoria Cross waiting for them, flanked by 2 large men. "Hello, Alexander," Victoria said with a cold smile. "Welcome back to the waking world. Pity it won't last long." Alexander stepped protectively in front of Jasmine despite his weakness. "Let her go, Victoria. She's not part of this." "Oh, but she is now. She has something that belongs to us." "The evidence belongs to the American people," Jasmine said, clutching the bag tightly. "They have a right to know about the corruption." Victoria laughed. "How noble. You're both going to die for your principles." But before anyone could move, the parking garage filled with flashing lights and sirens. Police cars and FBI vehicles surrounded them from all directions. "FBI. Nobody move." Agent Sarah Chen stepped out of the lead car, her weapon drawn. "Victoria Cross, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and a very long list of other charges." Victoria's face twisted with rage. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, we can," Agent Chen said. "We've been monitoring this hospital for weeks, waiting for you to make your move. We have everything on tape." As the FBI agents moved in to make arrests, Jasmine felt Alexander sag against her. The adrenaline that had kept him going was wearing off, and his body was shutting down from the strain. "He needs medical attention," she called out. "Real medical attention, not whatever they've been giving him." Agent Chen approached them carefully. "You must be Nurse Williams. Thank you for keeping Mr. Sterling alive. Without your courage, we never would have been able to build this case." "How did you know?" Jasmine asked. "We've been watching the hospital since we suspected Alexander was being kept unconscious illegally. When you started changing his care routine, we knew something was happening. We've been waiting for the right moment to move." As paramedics loaded Alexander onto a stretcher, he reached for Jasmine's hand. "Stay with me," he whispered, "please." "Always," she promised. But even as they were finally safe, Jasmine knew their greatest challenges were still ahead. Alexander would need months of recovery, and the legal battles were just beginning. The question was, would their love survive the real world, or had it only existed in the artificial intimacy of his hospital room? The next few days were a blur of medical tests, FBI interviews, and media attention. Alexander was transferred to a different hospital, one with no connections to the corruption scandal, where a team of specialists worked to undo the damage from 2 years of forced unconsciousness. Jasmine stayed by his side through it all, officially assigned as his private nurse by the FBI for his protection. But privately, she wondered if their relationship could survive outside the intense circumstances that had brought them together. "Your muscle tone is remarkable," Dr. Peterson, Alexander's new physician, told him during an examination. "Most patients would have significant atrophy after 2 years of immobility." "I had excellent care," Alexander said, looking at Jasmine with a smile that made her heart skip. Dr. Peterson was amazed by Alexander's rapid recovery. Within a week, he was walking without assistance. Within 2 weeks, he was strong enough to give his testimony to the FBI and congressional investigators. Jasmine watched from the observation room as Alexander testified via video link, his voice strong and clear as he detailed the corruption he had uncovered. The evidence from his safe, combined with his testimony, was enough to bring down dozens of powerful people. "You did it," she said when he finished. "You got justice." "We did it," Alexander corrected, taking her hand. "I couldn't have survived without you." But as Alexander grew stronger and more independent, Jasmine found herself feeling uncertain about their future. In the hospital, she had been essential to his survival. Now, he was a billionaire who could have anyone he wanted. What did he need with a simple nurse? Alexander seemed to sense her doubts. One evening, as they sat in his new private room, he brought up the subject directly. "You're pulling away from me," he said. "Why?" Jasmine looked down at her hands. "You're getting better. You don't need me anymore." "I'll always need you," Alexander said firmly, "but not as my nurse, as the woman I love." "Alexander, we met under extraordinary circumstances. What we felt. Maybe it was just because of the situation." Alexander moved his wheelchair closer to her chair. "Look at me, Jasmine." She raised her eyes to meet his. "I love you," he said simply, "not because you saved my life, though you did. Not because you were the only person who cared about me, though you were. I love you because you're brave and kind and beautiful, because you risked everything for a stranger. Because you see the best in people and fight for what's right." Tears filled Jasmine's eyes. "I love you too, but I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of your world. You're a billionaire, Alexander. You move in circles I can't even imagine. What happens when you go back to that life?" Alexander reached for her hands. "Then come with me, be part of my world." "I'm just a nurse." "You're the woman who saved my life and captured my heart. You're the bravest person I know. And if my world can't accept you, then I'll find a new world." Before Jasmine could respond, Agent Chen entered the room with news that changed everything. "We have a problem," she said grimly. "Victoria Cross made bail. And 3 of her associates have disappeared from custody." Alexander's expression hardened. "They're coming after us again." "We're moving you to a safe house immediately," Agent Chen said. "Both of you. Until the trials are over and all the conspirators are behind bars, you're not safe." Within hours, Jasmine and Alexander were transported to a secluded house in the mountains, surrounded by FBI agents and security systems. It was beautiful but felt like a prison. "How long will we have to stay here?" Jasmine asked. "Could be months," Agent Chen replied. "These cases are complex and we need to make sure everyone involved is caught." That first night in the safe house, Jasmine and Alexander finally had time to really talk without the pressure of his recovery or the chaos of the investigation. "I have a confession," Alexander said as they sat by the fireplace. "I was conscious more often than I let on, even before you started reducing my medication." "What do you mean?" "I heard you from the very first day. When you introduced yourself, when you talked about wanting to help people. Your voice was the first beautiful thing I'd experienced in 2 years." Jasmine felt her cheeks warm. "You heard everything I said." "Everything?" "Including when you told me you were falling in love with me. I can't believe you let me ramble on like that, knowing you could hear me." Alexander smiled. "It was the best part of my day every day. Hearing about your life, your dreams, your feelings. It gave me hope that someday I might wake up and find someone who could love me for who I really was, not for my money. And now? Now I want to spend the rest of my life proving that what we have is real." Alexander moved from his chair to sit beside her on the couch. "Jasmine, I know this isn't the most romantic setting, and I know we've only known each other for a few weeks in the real world. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. "Alexander." "I had Agent Chen help me get this," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Jasmine looked at the ring, then at Alexander's face. She saw love there, real and deep and permanent. Not gratitude, not circumstantial attachment, but genuine love. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, Jasmine realized that their love hadn't been born from desperate circumstances. It had grown despite them. And now, finally free from the danger that had brought them together, they could build a real future. But outside the safe house, in the darkness beyond the security lights, someone was watching and waiting. Victoria Cross had not given up, and the final battle for their freedom was still to come. 3 weeks into their stay at the safe house, Jasmine woke up to find Alexander standing by the window, fully dressed and looking stronger than she had ever seen him. "You're up early," she said, joining him. "I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about all the time I lost, all the things I want to do now that I'm free." Alexander had been working with physical therapists and nutritionists to regain his full strength. The transformation was remarkable. The pale, thin man from the hospital bed had been replaced by someone vibrant and powerful. "What kinds of things?" Jasmine asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "I want to expand my foundation, build more hospitals, more schools. I want to use my second chance to make an even bigger difference." He turned in her arms. "And I want to do it all with you." They had spent the past weeks planning their future together. Alexander wanted Jasmine to help him run his charitable foundation, using her medical background and her passion for helping people. "Are you sure you want to give up nursing?" he had asked. "I'm not giving it up, I'm expanding it. Instead of helping one patient at a time, I can help thousands." Their quiet morning was interrupted by Agent Chen, who arrived with news that changed everything. "We caught them," she announced. "Victoria Cross and her remaining associates. They were planning one final attempt to eliminate you both, but we intercepted their communications." Alexander and Jasmine looked at each other with relief and disbelief. "It's over," Jasmine asked. "It's over, you can go home." But as they prepared to leave the safe house, Alexander realized he didn't have a home anymore. His mansion held too many bad memories, and he had no desire to return there. "We'll get a new place," he told Jasmine. "Somewhere fresh, somewhere that's ours." They decided to stay in the city where they had met, in a penthouse apartment that Alexander purchased sight unseen. He wanted to be close to the hospital where Jasmine had saved his life, close to the place where their love story began. Moving in together was an adjustment. For the first time, they were living like a normal couple, dealing with everyday concerns instead of life-and-death situations. "I don't know how to make coffee," Alexander admitted on their first morning in the new apartment. Jasmine laughed. "I'll teach you, along with laundry, grocery shopping, and all the other normal things you missed while you were being a billionaire." "I want to learn everything," Alexander said seriously. "I want to experience all the ordinary moments I lost." They spent their first week together doing mundane things that felt extraordinary because they were doing them together. Grocery shopping became an adventure. Cooking dinner became a romantic date. Even folding laundry felt special when they did it side by side. But Alexander was also eager to get back to his work. His company had been run by trustees during his absence, and there were important decisions waiting for his attention. "I want you to come with me," he said as he prepared for his first day back at the office. "I want everyone to meet my fiancée." Jasmine felt nervous about entering Alexander's business world, but she was also curious. She had only known him as a patient and then as a man in hiding. Now she would see him in his element, the brilliant businessman who had built an empire. The Sterling Industries building was impressive, a gleaming tower in the heart of the financial district. As they rode the elevator to the top floor, Alexander squeezed Jasmine's hand. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "Are you?" Alexander paused. "I've been unconscious for 2 years. My company has been running without me. I'm not sure they even need me anymore." "They need you," Jasmine said firmly. "And if they don't appreciate what you bring to this company, then we'll start our own." Alexander's smile was radiant. "Have I mentioned lately that I love you?" "Only every day." The elevator doors opened to reveal a lobby full of employees who had gathered to welcome Alexander back. The applause was thunderous, and Jasmine could see tears in many eyes. "Mr. Sterling," said a woman who appeared to be his assistant, "welcome home." Thank you, Maria, it's good to be back. Alexander turned to Jasmine. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Jasmine Williams, my fiancée and the woman who saved my life. More applause, and Jasmine felt overwhelmed by the warmth of the reception. These people genuinely loved and respected Alexander, and they were grateful to her for bringing him back to them. Over the following days, Jasmine watched Alexander settle back into his role as CEO. But she noticed he was different from the businessman he had been before. He was more thoughtful, more focused on the human impact of his decisions. I used to think success was about profits and growth, he told her one evening. Now I realize it's about how many lives you can improve. Alexander began restructuring his company to focus more heavily on social responsibility. He increased charitable giving, improved working conditions for employees, and started new programs to help underprivileged communities. You're changing everything, Jasmine observed. You changed me, Alexander replied. You showed me what it means to truly care for someone, to put another person's well-being above your own comfort. I want my company to reflect those values. 3 months after leaving the safe house, Alexander and Jasmine received the news they had been waiting for. The trials were over, and all the conspirators had been convicted. Victoria Cross and her associates would spend decades in prison. It's really over this time, Agent Chen told them. You can live your lives without looking over your shoulders. That night, Alexander and Jasmine celebrated their freedom with a quiet dinner at home. As they sat on their balcony looking out over the city lights, Alexander took Jasmine's hand. I have something for you, he said, pulling out a small gift box. Inside was a key, ornate and old-fashioned. What's this for? Jasmine asked. It's the key to the new children's hospital we're building, the Jasmine Williams Memorial Hospital. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. Alexander, I'm not dead, it's not a memorial. It's a memorial to the woman you were before you met me. The nurse who dedicated her life to helping others. Now you get to help on a much bigger scale. We get to help, Jasmine corrected, together. As they kissed under the stars, Jasmine reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. She had started as a nurse assigned to care for a comatose patient. Now she was engaged to the love of her life and about to embark on a mission to heal the world. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been assigned to your case? She asked. Alexander considered this. I think we would have found each other anyway. Some connections are just meant to be. Even if I had never been your nurse. Even then, maybe I would have met you at a coffee shop or in a bookstore or at a charity event. Maybe it would have taken longer, but I believe we were destined to find each other. Jasmine smiled. I like that idea. Besides, Alexander added with a grin, you still give the best baths in the city. Jasmine laughed and playfully smacked his arm. That's not funny. It's a little funny. As they held each other close, both of them knew that their love story was just beginning. They had survived conspiracy and danger, awakening and recovery. Now they had the rest of their lives to discover what true love could accomplish when two people were completely committed to each other and to making the world a better place. 6 months after Alexander's awakening, they were planning their wedding when an unexpected visitor changed everything they thought they knew about his time in the coma. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a neurologist from Johns Hopkins, appeared at their apartment one evening with a request that stunned them both. I need to talk to you about your condition, Mr. Sterling, she said. About what really happened during those 2 years. Alexander and Jasmine exchanged glances. They thought they knew the whole truth about his forced unconsciousness. What do you mean? Alexander asked. Doctor. Harper opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick file. I've been studying your case for months. The drug cocktail they used on you, the way your body maintained its strength, the fact that you retained consciousness intermittently. It's unprecedented. They were experimenting on him, Jasmine said angrily, using him as a test subject. Yes, but not in the way you think. Dr. Harper looked directly at Alexander. You weren't just a victim, Mr. Sterling. You were the prototype for something much bigger. Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. What are you talking about? The people who did this to you weren't just trying to keep you quiet about the corruption. They were testing a new form of chemical control, a way to keep someone conscious but unable to act. They wanted to create the perfect prisoner, someone who could think and feel but not escape. Jasmine felt sick. You mean they were torturing him psychologically? In a way, yes, but Alexander's case was special. His brain fought back in ways they didn't expect. Instead of becoming a passive victim, he developed an extraordinary level of mental strength and awareness. Doctor, Harper showed them brain scans and medical reports that had been hidden from Alexander's official file. Look at these neural pathways, she said, pointing to the scans. Your brain literally rewired itself to maintain consciousness despite the drugs. You developed new connections, enhanced cognitive abilities. In medical terms, what happened to you was miraculous. Alexander studied the scans in amazement. Are you saying the experience made me different? Enhanced, Doctor. Harper corrected. Your memory, your analytical abilities, even your emotional intelligence have all been heightened. The human brain is remarkably adaptable, and yours adapted to survive in an impossible situation. But why are you telling us this now? Jasmine asked. Dr. Harper's expression grew serious. Because there are others. The people who did this to Alexander didn't stop with him. We've identified at least 12 other cases around the world where similar techniques were used. Alexander felt rage building in his chest. 12 other people are going through what I went through. Most of them are dead now. The experiments were not always successful. My God, Jasmine whispered. That's why I need your help, Dr. Harper continued. You're the only person who survived the full treatment and recovered. Your testimony, combined with your enhanced cognitive abilities, could help us shut down this program permanently. Alexander looked at Jasmine, seeing his own determination reflected in her eyes. What do you need us to do? He asked. There's going to be an international tribunal. The program spans multiple countries and involves some very powerful people. We need you to testify about your experience and help us identify the techniques they used. Of course, Alexander said immediately. When? Next month in Geneva. But I have to warn you, it won't be easy. You'll have to relive everything that happened to you in detail in front of the world. Jasmine reached for Alexander's hand. We'll do it together. Over the next few weeks, Alexander worked with Dr. Harper and other specialists to document his experience. The process was emotionally exhausting, forcing him to confront memories he had tried to bury. I remember everything, he told Jasmine one night after a particularly difficult session. Every injection, every test, every moment of helplessness. Sometimes I wish I could forget. But you can't, Jasmine said gently. And maybe that's the point. Your memory, your experience, it's going to save other people. I know it's just hard. Jasmine held him close. That's why I'm here, we'll get through this together. The enhanced cognitive abilities Dr. Harper had identified became more apparent as Alexander worked on his testimony. He could recall conversations word for word, remember exact dates and times, and analyze complex information with unprecedented clarity. It's like having a supercomputer in my head, he told Jasmine. I can see patterns and connections I never would have noticed before. Is it overwhelming? Sometimes, but mostly it's empowering. I understand things in a way I never did before. About people, about systems, about how the world really works. This new understanding influenced how Alexander ran his business and foundation. He could anticipate problems before they occurred, identify opportunities others missed, and develop solutions that seemed to come from nowhere. You're becoming a different person, Jasmine observed one evening as she watched him work on his testimony. Do you mind? Alexander asked, looking up from his notes with concern. I love who you're becoming, she said. You were always brilliant and kind. Now you're more insightful, more compassionate, more determined to make a difference. The experience changed me, Alexander admitted. Being helpless for so long, depending on your kindness to survive. It taught me things about humanity that I never understood before. As the date for the Geneva tribunal approached, Alexander and Jasmine received another shock. Agent Chen called with news that made their blood run cold. We intercepted communications suggesting there will be an attempt on your life during the tribunal, she said. Some very powerful people want to prevent your testimony. Who? Alexander asked. We're still investigating, but it appears to be a consortium of government and private interests. People who have invested heavily in the mind control program and want to protect their investment. Then we'll have extra security, Jasmine said firmly. It's not that simple, Agent Chen replied. The threat level is so high that we're recommending you testify via secure video link instead of appearing in person. Alexander considered this for a moment, then shook his head. No, those 12 people who died deserve better than that. The survivors who are still trapped deserve to see that someone escaped and fought back. I'm going to Geneva. Alexander, Jasmine said, maybe Agent Chen is right. Your testimony will be just as powerful over video. No, Alexander said firmly. I need to look those monsters in the eye when I tell the world what they did. I need them to see that they didn't break me. Doctor. Harper supported Alexander's decision. His presence will be much more impactful in person. The tribunal judges need to see the strength and intelligence he's developed, not just hear his words. 3 days before they were scheduled to leave for Geneva, Alexander woke up in the middle of the night with a strange sensation. His enhanced cognitive abilities were picking up on something, a pattern of small details that his subconscious had been assembling. Jasmine, he said, gently shaking her awake, we need to leave. Now. What's wrong? I've been analyzing everything over the past few weeks. The timing of Dr. Harper's visit, the specific questions she asked, the way Agent Chen presented the security threat. Something isn't right. Jasmine sat up, instantly alert. What do you mean? I think we're being manipulated. Someone wants us in Geneva, and they're using the tribunal as bait. Alexander's enhanced mind had detected inconsistencies in the stories they'd been told, small contradictions that individually meant nothing, but together formed a disturbing pattern. Dr. Harper, Jasmine said, understanding immediately. She knew too much about your condition. And she appeared right when we were getting comfortable, right when we thought we were safe. Someone sent her to get us to Geneva. They quickly gathered essential belongings and left their apartment through a service entrance Alexander had mapped out months earlier. His new analytical abilities had led him to always have multiple escape routes planned. Where are we going? Jasmine asked as they drove through the empty city streets. Somewhere they won't expect, somewhere I can use my enhanced abilities to figure out who's really behind this. Alexander drove to a small cabin he owned in the mountains, a property so well hidden that even his own security team didn't know about it. It was there, surrounded by silence and safety, that he began to put together the final pieces of the puzzle. The mind control program never ended, he told Jasmine as he worked through documents on his laptop. They just adapted it. Instead of keeping people unconscious, they're now using more subtle forms of control. What do you mean? Think about it. Dr. Harper appeared and convinced us to expose ourselves at an international tribunal. Agent Chen created a security threat that would require us to travel under heavy protection. Someone has been guiding our actions for months. Jasmine felt a chill of realization. They want us in Geneva for a reason. Not us, Alexander said grimly. Me. They want to study my enhanced cognitive abilities. I'm not just a witness to their program, I'm proof that it can create something valuable. So the tribunal is fake. No, the tribunal is real. But it's also a trap. They're going to use my testimony to demonstrate the success of their program, then they're going to take me back. Alexander's enhanced mind worked through possibilities and probabilities with frightening speed. We have one advantage, he said finally. They think I'm still the same person I was before. They don't understand how much my abilities have grown. What's our plan? Alexander smiled, and Jasmine saw a new kind of determination in his eyes. We're going to turn the tables. Instead of walking into their trap, we're going to spring one of our own. Over the next 2 days, Alexander used his enhanced abilities to hack into secure systems, trace financial connections, and identify the real power structure behind the mind control program. What he found was more extensive than either of them had imagined. It's a global network, he told Jasmine. Government agencies, private corporations, even some charitable organizations. They've been using the program to control key individuals for years. How many people? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Politicians, judges, business leaders, journalists. Anyone with influence who started asking inconvenient questions. My God, Alexander, this is bigger than we thought. Which is why we can't just run away. If we don't stop this now, it will keep growing until they control everything. Alexander had developed a plan that would expose the entire network while keeping them safe. But it required them to return to the city and take enormous risks. Are you sure about this? Jasmine asked as they prepared to leave the cabin. I'm sure about us, Alexander replied. And I'm sure that together we can accomplish anything. As they drove back toward the city and the most dangerous gambit of their lives, Alexander took Jasmine's hand. Whatever happens next, he said, I want you to know that meeting you, falling in love with you, it gave my life meaning. Before you, I was just a rich man trying to do good. Now I'm someone who understands what's truly worth fighting for. We're going to win, Jasmine said with fierce conviction. We're going to expose them all and save those people. Yes, Alexander agreed. We are. But as they approached the city lights, both of them knew that their greatest challenge lay ahead. The final confrontation with the forces that had stolen 2 years of Alexander's life was about to begin. Alexander's plan was audacious in its simplicity. Instead of hiding from their enemies or walking into their trap, he was going to use his enhanced cognitive abilities to orchestrate the largest exposure of corruption in modern history. We're going to the tribunal, he told Jasmine as they sat in a secure location overlooking the city, but not the way they expect. Over the past 48 hours, Alexander had used his enhanced mental capabilities to penetrate the conspiracy's communication networks. What he found was a detailed plan to capture him during the tribunal and use him as proof that their mind control program could create enhanced individuals. They want to turn me into their poster child, he explained. Proof that their torture techniques can create better humans. Over my dead body, Jasmine said fiercely. That's exactly what I'm hoping to avoid, Alexander replied with a smile. But we need to be smart about this. Alexander had discovered that the real power behind the conspiracy wasn't any government agency or corporation. It was a secret organization of wealthy individuals who believed that democracy was inefficient and that the world needed to be controlled by enhanced elites. They think they're saving humanity, he told Jasmine. They genuinely believe that torturing people into enhanced consciousness is a noble goal. They're monsters. Yes, but monsters with unlimited resources and powerful friends. We can't fight them head-on. Alexander's plan relied on his enhanced abilities to predict and manipulate their actions. He would appear to walk into their trap while actually setting up a much larger exposure. I'm going to testify at the tribunal, he said, but I'm also going to broadcast the real evidence simultaneously to every major news outlet in the world. How? Alexander smiled. Remember, my brain was rewired during those 2 years. I can process information and see patterns that normal people miss. I've identified weaknesses in their security, contradictions in their stories, and most importantly, I know exactly how they think. The day of the tribunal, Alexander and Jasmine flew to Geneva under heavy security. To outside observers, it looked like they were following the plan their enemies had laid out, but Alexander had prepared multiple contingencies. Are you ready? Jasmine asked as they entered the tribunal building. I've been ready for 2 years, Alexander replied. The hearing room was packed with international observers, legal officials, and media representatives. Alexander took his place at the witness table, looking calm and confident despite the danger. Mr. Sterling, the lead prosecutor began, please tell the tribunal about your experience as a victim of the illegal mind control program. Alexander began his testimony, speaking clearly and powerfully about the 2 years he had spent in forced unconsciousness. But as he spoke, he was also implementing his real plan. Using subtle hand signals and code words, he activated a network of allies he had secretly contacted over the past weeks. Journalists, hackers, whistleblowers, and even some honest government officials who had been investigating the conspiracy independently. The program doesn't just steal time from its victims, Alexander testified. It steals their humanity, their agency, their fundamental right to control their own minds. While he spoke, massive amounts of evidence were being released simultaneously across the globe. Financial records showing the conspiracy's funding sources, audio recordings of planning meetings, video evidence of other victims, medical records proving the extent of the experimentation. In the tribunal audience, Jasmine watched as people began checking their phones and tablets, their expressions changing from curiosity to shock as the evidence flooded the internet. But the conspirators had been prepared for something like this. As Alexander continued his testimony, armed security forces surrounded the building. "Ladies and gentlemen," came an announcement over the building's PA system, "this tribunal is now under the protection of international security forces. No one may leave until proceedings are complete." Alexander had expected this. His enhanced cognitive abilities had allowed him to predict their desperation move. "Your Honors," he said, addressing the tribunal judges, "what you're witnessing right now is exactly what I've been trying to warn you about. These people believe they have the right to control others through force and manipulation." The lead prosecutor, who Alexander had identified as being part of the conspiracy, tried to regain control. "Mr. Sterling, please limit your testimony to your personal experience." "My personal experience is that these people will stop at nothing to maintain their power," Alexander replied, "including taking this entire tribunal hostage." At that moment, Jasmine stood up in the audience. "I'm Nurse Jasmine Williams," she announced loudly. "I'm the woman who cared for Alexander during his captivity. And I want everyone here to know that what he's telling you is the truth." "Ma'am, please sit down," a security guard said, moving toward her. "I will not sit down while innocent people are being tortured," Jasmine replied. "I've seen the evidence, I've witnessed the aftermath, and I won't be silenced." Other people in the audience began standing as well. Reporters, legal observers, even some of the official delegates. Alexander's evidence release had reached them in real time, and they could see the truth for themselves. "The program must be stopped," Alexander continued, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "Not just because it's illegal, but because it represents everything that's wrong with unchecked power." Outside the building, the evidence Alexander had released was causing a global sensation. Government officials were being arrested, corporate executives were resigning, and protests were erupting in major cities worldwide. But inside the tribunal, the conspirators were making their final desperate move. "Mr. Sterling," the lead prosecutor said, "you will come with us now. Your enhanced capabilities make you too valuable to lose." "No," Alexander said simply, "I won't." "You don't have a choice." Alexander smiled. "That's where you're wrong. You see, while you were busy planning to capture me, I was busy ensuring that wouldn't be possible." The lights in the building flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "What did you do?" the prosecutor demanded. "I demonstrated the difference between enhanced cognition and moral intelligence," Alexander replied. "You have the first, but you lack the second." In the darkness and confusion that followed, Alexander's allies struck. The corrupt security forces found themselves surrounded by legitimate law enforcement officers from multiple countries. The conspiracy's communication networks were jammed. Their financial assets were frozen. When the lights came back on, the tribunal room was filled with real security personnel, and the conspirators were in handcuffs. "It's over," Alexander announced to the room. "The program is finished, the network is exposed, and the victims will finally get justice." In the aftermath, as Alexander and Jasmine were finally, truly safe, they stood together on the steps of the tribunal building, looking out at the crowd of reporters and supporters who had gathered. "You did it," Jasmine said, taking his hand. "You actually did it." "We did it," Alexander corrected. "None of this would have been possible without you." "What happens now?" Alexander considered this. Now we go home, we get married. We build hospitals and schools, and help people heal from what these monsters did to them. And your enhanced abilities. I'll use them to make sure something like this never happens again. But more importantly, I'll use them to love you better, to understand you more deeply, to be the partner you deserve. 6 months later, Alexander and Jasmine were married in a small ceremony in the hospital garden where they had first met. The guest list included former patients Alexander's foundation had helped, medical professionals who had joined their crusade for ethical treatment, and survivors of the mind control program who had been freed thanks to their efforts. When I was lying in that hospital bed, Alexander said in his wedding vows, I thought my life was over, but it was actually just beginning. You didn't just save my life, Jasmine. You gave me a reason to live it. When I first met you, Jasmine replied, I thought I was just doing my job. I had no idea I was falling in love with my future husband, my partner in changing the world, and the most extraordinary man I've ever known. As they kissed to seal their marriage, the hospital staff who had gathered to watch erupted in applause. Alexander and Jasmine had become a symbol of hope, proof that love could triumph over evil, and that two people working together could change the world. Their foundation grew rapidly, helping victims of the mind control program rebuild their lives while also funding research into ethical medical practices. Alexander's enhanced cognitive abilities, combined with Jasmine's compassionate expertise, created an organization that truly understood how to heal both individuals and society. Do you ever regret what happened to you? Jasmine asked one evening as they worked together in their home office, planning the next phase of their foundation's expansion. Alexander considered this seriously. I regret the suffering, both mine and that of the other victims. I regret the time we lost, but I can't regret the outcome. If I hadn't been put in that hospital bed, I never would have met you. And without you, I never would have become the person I am now. Even with all the enhancements, all the cognitive abilities. Those are just tools, Alexander said, pulling her close. What matters is having someone to share them with, someone who sees the person behind the abilities and loves him anyway. Always, Jasmine promised. As they held each other in their beautiful home, surrounded by evidence of the good they were doing in the world, both Alexander and Jasmine knew that their love story was far from over. They had survived conspiracy and danger, awakening and transformation. Now they had the rest of their lives to discover what two people could accomplish when their love was stronger than any force that tried to tear them apart. The miraculous thing hadn't been Alexander's awakening from the coma. The miraculous thing was the love that had grown between a nurse and her patient, a love so powerful it had changed not just their lives, but the lives of countless others around the world. And in the end, that was the most miraculous thing of all.